What if you could help others to find the power to heal themselves? Physically, emotionally, and spiritually.
When I started teaching my classes, it was in 2002, and I was just doing the past life regressions and contacting the subconscious part. But then as the time went on and we found how powerful this was and what we could do with it, a lot of the students began saying, you know, advanced past life regression doesn't really tell what it's all about. This is so much more than that. We think you should change the name. So it was a few years ago we decided to change the name to Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. And this is the healing technique that we've now been teaching it, well, since 2002, that's 12 years.
What if you could time travel with them? Visit mythical places or angelic realms, other worlds, other galaxies. Help others to speak to their higher selves. You can. Dolores has taught thousands of people from across the world how to use QHHT, and now you can learn her method by going directly to dolorescannon.com. And don't forget to mention the discount code MORETALKS.
Established over 100 years ago, Watkins Books is one of the world's oldest and leading independent bookshops specializing in esoterica. We have the widest selection of esoteric books in the UK, and our friendly and knowledgeable staff are here to assist you in a unique ambience of our shop. So come and visit us in the heart of London as we're open every day.
The More Show is supported by Mindscape, Paranormal and UFO Matrix magazines, available for download on all major digital platforms. The comments and views expressed on The More Show are those of the people that make them and do not necessarily reflect the view of Kevin Moore, The More Show, or this radio station and its affiliate or sponsors. This show is for entertainment purposes only.
Broadcasting from the UK and across the world online. You're now watching the UK's only alternative late night talk show, and I'm your host, Kevin Moore. For the next hour, I'll be covering subjects that will open up your mind and provide you with information you may have never heard before. On today's show, I'm joined with Miguel Mendonace and Barbara Lamb. Now, Miguel Mendonace is a writer of fiction and non-fiction, exploring sustainability, consciousness, and ufology. He's also the author of 5 books. Now, Barbara Lamb is a licensed psychotherapist, hypnotherapist, and regression therapist in Southern California. She has worked with over 1,700 people in relation to extraterrestrial encounters. She has co-authored 2 books, Alien Experiences and Crop Circles Revealed. Now, they'll join me today to discuss their latest book, Meet the Hybrids, The Lives and Mission of ET Ambassadors on Earth. Meet the Hybrids is a cutting-edge dialogue which explores the lived experiences of 8 individuals who understand that they are part human and part extraterrestrial. Guided by their star families and other entities, they are dedicated to personal missions which contribute to a larger process involving the flourishing of human consciousness and the protection and evolution of life on Earth at this critical time. Barbara and Miguel, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Nice to be with you.
It is fantastic.
Pleasure.
Yeah, it's my pleasure to have you both on. It really is, guys. I called Barbara yourself up just a few weeks ago. Well, a bit more than a few weeks ago now it was. And you told me about this fantastic book that you'd been working on with Miguel. And eventually I got to speak to yourself, Miguel, and it's an incredible book that you guys have put together here. It really is very groundbreaking in many ways. But just to begin with, Barbara, if we could you could just tell us a bit about yourself to begin with, just a bit about background information.
Yes, certainly. Be happy to. Well, way back in 1976, I became licensed as a psychotherapist here in California, and I noticed that I was really favoring doing some sort of what I call deeper work, where people would access things from their subconscious mind in a state of deep relaxation. And that led to 5 years of being trained in past life regression therapy. And then that went through the 1980s. And then by 1990 or 1991, people started coming to me who had had extraterrestrial encounters. And I found that with all of my regression training, I could easily work with them, not only the counseling, but doing hypnotic regressions to help them to remember the details of their extraterrestrial encounters. So when I began that work in 1991, I thought, oh, maybe once in a while somebody would come for that sort of work. But as it turned out, a lot of people have come. It's been at least 1,700 individuals who have come to me to do regressions to find the details of their extraterrestrial encounters. And some of those people have been able to stay for a long time, or that is, repeated sessions to different experiences they've had. And that would amount to about 2,700 regressions
Wow.
just to people's experiences with extraterrestrial beings.
Incredible.
So it really has been a marvelous experience, knowing these people and knowing the details and getting a sense of knowing vicariously
Yes.
some of these extraterrestrial beings.
Right.
There's a lot of information here. And I found that even in the early 1990s, because of this work, that I was being asked to give lectures at various meetings and conferences and, of course, radio interviews and so forth. And the whole subject has just grown and grown and grown. And then I must say that during this practice, during this regression work, it very, very often came out, particularly from my women clients, that they were discovering that they had had hybrid babies and hybrid children with their reproductive material, their sperm if they were men, or ova if they were women, and that had been combined with extraterrestrial genetics and reproductive material, and that they had hybrid children living on board the UFOs, and that they would be taken sometimes by these beings, the extraterrestrials, to the craft where the hybrid babies or hybrid children were living. And they were introduced to them, and they were encouraged to hold them, sometimes to nurse them, and to get to know them as children. And in many cases, they got to sort of occasionally visit with these children and develop a relationship of sorts with them. So that was a very interesting aspect of the
Incredible.
whole thing.
Yeah.
And then in 2011, I was invited to give a lecture at a major MUFON, that's Mutual UFO Network symposium, their annual symposium. And I was asked to give a lecture on ET human hybrids. Are they real? That was the title that they gave my lecture. So I did a lot of research about that, And not only the hybrids who were not human enough in proportion to be able to stay on Earth or certainly to live on Earth, but also I began to realize that there were some hybrids who were a large enough proportion of human that they could live on Earth. Now, in the meantime, as all this was developing, I happened one time, I think it was about 5 or 6 years ago, at one of the big UFO conferences, I happened to meet a woman who really impressed me immediately as a hybrid. And so here I was just meeting her in the hallway of this big conference. And I looked at her and she looked at me, and I had sort of a startled expression on my face, apparently, in seeing her. And she said, "What?" And I said, "Oh, well, I hope you don't mind my saying this, but you remind me of a hybrid." And she said, "Ah, I am a hybrid." Now, that woman is named Cynthia Crawford, and it turns out that she is one of the hybrids in our book called Meet the Hybrids. So I got to know Cynthia and felt very inspired by her. She seemed to be an exceptional person. She had a lot of extraterrestrial genetics in her, and she had some excellent abilities that I was very impressed with. So, about 2 years after that, at another International UFO Congress, which is the second woman that I had met who turned out to be a hybrid, and I recognized her as a mantis being, mantis extraterrestrial / human hybrid being. Can you hear me now?
Perfect.
Oh, good. Okay. That woman's name is Fran Harris. And it turned out that I got to know her quite well. A year or so after that, I invited her to come across the country from North Carolina, where she lives, and come and visit me in California. And we went to a conference, and she even spoke for a few minutes at that conference. And she stayed with me for about 5 days. And during the 5 days, I was really observing her. I was very friendly with her and really noticing things, noticing how psychic she was, how she amazingly tuned in to the nature out in my garden, and how she could see little lizards and little insects that I had to really strain to see. She seemed to be very, very tuned into nature, and she also was tuned into animals. For instance, when we took some of our walks, we would come near another person walking a dog, and she would start talking to the dog, and she could see the whole history of the dog. For instance, if the dog had been rescued from a bad situation, she seemed to know psychically exactly what that situation was. And then we talked to the owner of the dog, and he confirmed that those details were completely accurate. So, to make a long story short, after 5 days
Yeah.
of being with this woman, and very nice person, I just decided that, yeah, I think she's the real thing. She really does have these abilities. And I noticed too that she looked a bit different than the rest of us. Not strikingly so, but she did have very, very long legs and very long arms, and the way she moved around, the way she walked, actually was a little bit different and seemed very reminiscent of what I had already learned about the mantis extraterrestrial beings. So, in the meantime, I was coming to know another woman in the state of Kentucky, which is far, far away from where I am as well. And I never did meet her in person, but we had several long phone conversations and email exchanges. And that woman seems to be, and she's convinced that she is a reptilian human hybrid. And the reptilians, very often, at least here in this country, have a very bad press. A lot of people think, oh, the reptilians are just horrible, dominating, and
Yes.
rather nasty. But they're not all that way for sure. I know that there are quite a number of different reptilian species, and this woman in Kentucky was, or I should say, is um, um, a mixture of reptilian that is a very favorable group, a very positive group. And she said some wonderful things about them. They're even quite spiritual in their own way. And
Yes.
she used to go to a temple, a reptilian temple that was actually underground, and she had some artistic ability. So she painted, two or three paintings of the inside of that temple and sent those to me by email. And it looked like a very grandiose place with very large columns, with a serpent, like a gold serpent sculpture wrapped around the columns. But from her point of view, it was completely wonderful. There was nothing sinister in any way about that. She also uh, sometimes did what we call shape shifting or morphing into her reptilian aspects. And she sent me pictures of that as well. And she said what would happen, that sometimes when she was feeling a lot of emotion, could be negative emotion or very positive emotion, that people would notice that her eyes would change from round pupils and round irises and whites around them, change into vertical slits for pupils, like the reptilian look, like our reptiles have as well. And that even the skin around her eyes, all around that, in the upper part of her face, and then eventually her whole face would turn into reptilian, highly textured skin. So she showed me a picture of when she had performed in an amateur opera in her community, and there was high emotion in that singing at that particular part of the opera. And the photo that she sent me, you could actually see her pupils had changed, and the look all around her eyes and forehead and upper cheeks was changing into a different color
Right.
and a different texture, which certainly seemed to be reptilian. So, my goodness, these things just kept coming across my attention. And I thought, how fascinating that this is an aspect that hadn't been too publicized in the whole UFO extraterrestrial field at that time. This is still a few years ago. So when I did that large presentation at the MUFON symposium, I did extra research about this, and particularly the research about the extraterrestrial hybrid people who are combined with humans and who are actually living here on Earth.
Right, right.
Uh, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay. Go ahead. Go on. Yeah, because I'm going to get to Miguel in just a moment as well. Yeah.
Yes, well, I was just going to mention, I know Miguel has studied this material as well, that I read, so this is still, 2011 or 2010, in my own history. I read this wonderful PhD dissertation about human alien hybrids. And this dissertation was written by a woman also here in California, as it turns out, a woman named Christiane Quiros. So when she was getting her PhD and had to do her dissertation, she was actually inspired by apparently another being, extraterrestrial being, that the subject of her dissertation should be, as it was called at that time, alien human hybrids. So she did a lot of work on that. I knew that woman, Christiane Quiros, and I referred a few of my clients, my extraterrestrial experiencer clients, to her. And she also found a few others and did a really remarkable, excellent study on these people. So that gave me even more information. So this subject is something that I've been interested in for quite a long time. And I think it's really true. It's absolutely feasible, even though for new people, the subject of ET human hybrids seems so fantastic. I mean, particularly people who don't even think there's any reality to the whole UFO extraterrestrial phenomenon.
Yes,
You know,
yes.
so occasionally we get, probably Miguel does too, uh, a little bit of eye rolling when we talk to people about this. But then I think people are sort of coming on board more and more, thinking, maybe these things really are happening.
Absolutely, and I think your work and your input to the community and what you've done over the years is so admirable. It really is. You've done some fantastic books as well, and I know that your lectures, when you hold them, that they are so fascinating, and people love to hear you speak. So it's really fantastic to have you on and to have collaborated with this book, and
Oh,
and
thank you.
Miguel, if we just bring you on as well. Now, how did you both collaborate? How did this collaboration start off to begin with, and what is your background?
My background is especially mixed. I guess I did lots of different things in different places, different times. Very sort of episodic life, I suppose you'd say. But I suppose my most recent career was as an environmentalist. I was in particular researching and writing about and advocating renewable energy policy. That somehow became my area, and it was an amazing education, really, in how the world works, I suppose, in how decisions are made in human culture. And yeah, it was a fascinating experience, working with people all over the world. Fighting the good fight. That's how it felt. But that came to an end around, I suppose, 2011, something like that. And at that point, I started to write fiction. And in 2009, while on vacation in the Azorian Islands, where my father's from, my girlfriend and I had this spectacular UFO sighting that was just equivocal. It's like, well, that's a spaceship. There's nothing else it could be. There's just no possibility that it could be anything other. And I'd always been interested since I was tiny. I felt it was clear there was a reality to this. My father had bought me a book on the subject, and I always had this idea that from where it came, I don't know, but I always had this understanding that they knew, they understood, they had a kind of superior understanding. And I, as I say, I don't know where that came from, but after that sighting, I think a lot of people watching this will understand the way in which this subject, particularly when you've had a sighting, just grabs hold of you and it will not let go. You have to know, you have to understand. And as I started to write fiction in the last sort of 5-6 years, sooner or later, when I was writing this book about truth, a character popped up in it that seemed to have ties to the black budget world. And I just jumped right in. That was it. Something like 2 years of round-the-clock research. It was an absolute obsession. And because my girlfriend was as fascinated as I was, I actually could share it. But as Barbara said, when I took this subject to other people, their eyes would glaze over. You'd get this kind of frozen smile locked on the faces of some people. They're just waiting for you to stop talking about it. Only one person in all that time just said, well, yeah, obviously. I mean, you wouldn't get this amount of sightings for 70 odd years if they're not actually there. So that was an interesting road. But as I got into the subject, when I discovered the subject of hybrids, it was popping up here and there in different places. But in Carla Turner's book, Taken, there were various mentions of it. And there was something that just grabbed me about it. And then I saw Barbara's lecture that she mentioned, her 2011 MUFON lecture. And as I came to sort of understand this phenomenon in its sort of in how it affects the people involved in it, I felt, well, there's the emotional center of ufology itself. And I started to write a novel about it. I set aside the other book and I put this story together, and there were a couple of hybrids in the story. And because I wanted to honor the lived experience of actual hybrids, and I knew through Barbara's lecture that she had met some, I emailed her. I said, perhaps we could have a chat. She was agreeable. We had that conversation, and she said in that conversation that she had just come from a meeting of a group of hybrids who were thinking about how they could help to bring their understanding, the knowledge of themselves and the ET races that they're representing to the rest of the world. And again, it was just one of those moments where I guess life took a turn. I must have been processing it because, overnight, because I woke up in the morning, I just wrote 8 pages nonstop in my journal of notes, all of the thoughts, all of the different things that came up. I wrote that up as a discussion paper. I sent that to Barbara. We discussed the discussion paper. And at the end of that discussion, I said, well, let's think about putting a book together on this, because what seemed really important in this whole process is that the hybrids are heard at length in detail, and they get to share their understanding and their reality with the rest of the world on their terms, in their voice, rather than having, let's say, well, I guess we've all seen documentaries made by, we could call them the wrong people, who don't really do these subjects justice. They don't really understand. I don't think they really care terribly much. But I really cared about these people, and I don't really understand why there was that depth of caring about them, but there was something empathic that happened when I learnt about them. And so I felt it was really important that at this time, if they really want to introduce themselves and their understanding to the world at large, well, I'm a writer. That's a thing that I can do. I could offer that. Barbara, with her knowledge, her contacts, her way of normalizing this subject. I mean, that's what got hold of me when I was so struck by her style of delivery, her manner, in that she could have been talking about anything at all. Anything at all. It could have been interior decorating. It was so normal the way that she spoke about it, and it really kind of relaxed the subject as far as I was concerned. Ufology can be a very challenging sphere, if you like, and Barbara's attitude towards it, I thought, was absolutely necessary, so that people could be relaxed about it. They could take the kind of high emotion out of it. They could just think rationally about this and engage with it on that level, and thereby, I think, be more productive. So it seemed, Christiane Quiros used the phrase cosmic choreography in all of the different things that had to line up for her to do what she did at that particular time, 13 years ago. And I feel the same is true here. If there's anything to that concept, I feel it absolutely took place in the coming together of this book.
Kevin, if you don't mind, from my point of view, in researching all this and working with clients, and also having a regular psychotherapy practice, which takes most of my time, I had in mind for the last few years that, wow, it would be really wonderful if I could find the time to write about these hybrids. And but I just was not finding the time with my regular work and preparing for new lectures all the time, and doing some traveling for my own life experiences, as well as the time for these different conferences and so forth. And I was just sort of carrying that idea that, well, gosh, maybe I could retire, and then maybe I could write about some of the extraterrestrial main points, and particularly about the hybrids. And so that's how I was going along. And then I felt so fortunate, really blessed, that Miguel happened to find me on the internet, and I really liked his whole attitude. I liked him as we had a couple of conversations, and And it just seemed so perfect and appropriate when he suggested that we might collaborate on a book. And I thought, oh, good, that's how I'll do it. I don't have the time to do all that writing, but I would love to get this information out and love to bring in some of the hybrids whom I already knew. So I'm so grateful to Miguel, and it has been a wonderful association working with him. It's like nothing else in my life. I mean, this whole relationship of collaborating has been a very fascinating project in itself,
Yes.
let alone the writing of the book, but
Ye-
just working with him.
ye-
He is really an exceptional human being, and I'm just so very happy to know him.
and you've made this work from such great distances as well.
Yes.
It's
Well,
incredible.
thanks to Skype, we have done uh, many, many, many hours of interviews with our hybrids. I'm sure we'll get into that more. And also, Miguel and I have had many, many Skype conversations just to discuss various aspects of
Yes.
working on this book.
Yes.
So thank goodness for the technology. I don't know how we would have done it really before Skype, especially with Miguel being in Bristol,
Well,
England, and my being in Southern California. That's a good hefty 6,000 mile difference.
yes, absolutely.
So it
Well,
really has
this.
been wonderful that the technology has facilitated that.
Yes, and this is the great thing about the internet. Not only has it brought you together for, I really mean this as well, for this wonderful book, which we've got so much to go through, and even in today's interview, we will barely scratch the surface on this, right? That's why I highly recommend that as you resonate with this interview, to get the book and to really go into it in depth, But just staying on the fact of the internet, if we look back 70 years in ufology, and just to see where it's gone from, the sort of nuts and bolts craft to now, looking into the direction of metaphysical psychology, consciousness, and this hybrid program. It's absolutely amazing. And I will say as well that, you say this in your book as well, that, mainstream science, says most of this, what we're going to discuss today, is impossible. It cannot be. Whatever is going on here, it's explainable in material terms. There is no such thing as consciousness existing outside the body or non-human races visiting Earth from other solar systems. It's all impossible because we cannot currently or explain it or understand it, or there is no data to say it's repeatable. Yeah. What do you guys have to say on that from what you've both been through and gone through in the process of this book?
Well, I would have taken that attitude myself, 30 years ago or 28 years ago. But then once I started meeting these people and doing the hypnotic regressions with them and having many conversations with them as well, I could not help but realize that these things are happening. These people in the regressions are really reliving these encounter experiences. So even though I went into this part of my work not knowing if it was true or if it was just some sort of aspect of science fiction, I became convinced with the very first client I worked with back in 1991 that, wow, this is so detailed and so deeply felt by this young woman I was regressing to ET experiences that it really opened me up, and so has everybody else. But I think I can very much appreciate that other people who have not had these experiences and have not known people who've had these experiences, it all could seem impossible. and just all too fantastic. But it isn't impossible. It really does happen. But I feel very privileged that I've been able to have that sort of inside track on it, so to speak.
Right. Right.
And so I feel totally convinced.
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
I've got to say that your book, the both of you, the ramifications of this book is pretty far fetching, actually. In the sense of what this actual phenomena is and could be. Okay, let's Miguel, if we go to yourself. Explain the hybrids for us, if you can do. How have these people that you've interviewed come to be hybrids in a sense? What is how many generations have they gone through? What is the process?
To be honest, I feel like we only scratched the surface with that particular subject. I feel like when you look at the structure of the interviews, you'll see that I'm already planning book 2 because there's so many things that you begin to open them up, and then you've got to move on to something else. I think this book really is a primer. This is kind of Hybrids 101. This is to get some idea of how they're created, why they're created, what they are here to do, what is this process that they are all a part of? What are the implications for us, for human consciousness? But in terms of how they're created, I mean, Barbara's in particular sort of specialized in focusing on that, and the chapter summarizing all of that in the book is hers. So she would be the best person to answer that question. But in general, there are, it seems, physical and metaphysical components. Each person seems to have a different understanding of how they're created. For some of them, like one in particular, it was through a top secret military program. Some of them just don't know. Some of them, one in particular, has 4 different theories of how it could have been achieved, including the fact that he may, in some senses, be a second generation hybrid, at least second generation, because he had actually met, when he first met one of the other hybrids involved in the book, a lady by the name of Jacqueline Smith. When Robert and Jacqueline met one another, they were just freaked out, because, pleasantly so, because they realized that they already knew each other. They had met on the ships, and they both have a mantis aspect. And so they, after connecting for some time, they spontaneously did this mantis bow. And this is all of this is mentioned in the book, and it was just fascinating to me that such a thing was possible. And Robert had subsequently come to understand that it may be that because, he has this mantis component and some other ET genetics, that some of his DNA may have come from Jacqueline. Let that one sink in. All of them, I would also say, don't seem to have a very strong interest in that subject. It's like that's the past. That's how they were built. That's how they were sort of constructed. But it doesn't matter enormously to them. They're more focused on their missions.
Okay, and we're going to get into this. I want to build into that, but it's just from my understanding. Then, are we saying that they've potentially, from a soul perspective, as a soul, chosen to incarnate into a human body when they were having past lives on other planets, for them to come here to help the planet? Are we not even talking about that? Are we talking about that the hybridization program is in a sense where they've been taking sperm and eggs, and they are using this to build a new a race that looks like ourselves, so that they can eventually, after generations of birth and kids and everything else, can bring new those that look like us into our civilization. Am I getting it completely wrong? I'm trying to for the audience to try to understand how has this happened? How are they here now? What is their lineage?
Well, at least
like
two of them
address
said
that.
they.
Okay, Barbara, hang on, guys, hang on. Barbara, you want to address that, do you?
I would like to, yes,
Okay.
and that's certainly Miguel may as well. These people all have a sense that they are volunteers. They were not made to be hybrid. They were not forced into anything. They were not made to be hybrids living here on Earth, but rather they have a sense of having volunteered for this. And that usually means having volunteered when they were souls before coming into this lifetime, into this incarnation. And the way that the hybridization happened for them, that varies according to each one of these hybrids. But at least a couple of them had it happen that when they were in their mother's wombs, so they were gestating away as nice little fetuses, and that the mothers were taken to someplace else. In one case, it seemed to be on board the UFO, and in another case, it seemed to be an undercover military facility here on Earth. And in both cases, the mothers had an injection put through the wall of their abdomen, through the wall of the womb, and into the fetus. And then eventually, after more gestation, they gave birth to the baby here on Earth. I believe all of our hybrids were born here on Earth in the regular way, but that they were influenced with the extraterrestrial genetics in various ways. So the injection I have just talked about was full of extraterrestrial genetic material. And in some cases, it seems to have been from material from one extraterrestrial species. And in others, like in Cynthia's case, for instance, the injection had a variety of species of extraterrestrial in that mixture that was injected into her through the mother's womb. And in that case, as has been mentioned already, the Cynthia's mother had been unknowingly injected when she was pregnant with this extraterrestrial DNA, or rather Cynthia in the mother's womb was. That was a covert project that involved humans, human top secret people who already had extraterrestrial genetic material. Now, how they got that, I don't know. That's all part of an unknown program. But it was sort of an experimental thing to see what would happen. Could there be a hybrid mixture? And could a person with that mixture live successfully on the Earth?
Right.
Now, the thing is about that sounds, to me anyway, sounds sort of sinister, that the mother didn't realize what was happening to her. But the genetics that came through in Cynthia, the fetus, and then, of course, being born and growing up, the genetics that came through were from species who are very highly conscious, highly spiritual, highly advanced. So that even though this came about, in my opinion, in a rather undercover, kind of sinister way, but what came through for her is so excellent. It's so
Right.
highly advanced, highly spiritual, that I'm frankly very glad that it happened,
Yes,
that
yes.
she is with us.
Yeah, okay. Now that's kind of making some sense to me of how this is happening, and we're going to get into the whys and all that kind of good stuff. We really are. But just to lay in the foundations here because it's so important. So then when there's been talk of seeing mothers who have seen their offspring, their genetics that have been developed, and these are now living as hybrids on board the ships, and yet they don't look human. They can't, mingle with us as such, or have a life down here because they would seem to be too different. What is that process then? Is that a different
the
process?
hybrids who live on board?
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that's a different thing. Very typical. There, it happens in a few different ways. But the ones that I have heard the most of is that a human woman will be taken for a brief episode, an hour or two, by the extraterrestrials, and the eggs will be taken from her ovaries, and then she will be returned. And then the eggs that have been taken will be mixed with extraterrestrial reproductive material and genetics. And then that substance, which is grown in the equivalent of what we would call a petri dish under very specific conditions, then that substance is implanted into the woman in another encounter, and she will gestate that embryo for 1.5 to 3 months, during which time she recognizes that she is pregnant. And in many of these cases, she'll go to the doctor, and the doctor will confirm, yes, indeed, she's pregnant. And in some of those cases, the women say, well, I can't be pregnant because I haven't even been with a man
Yes.
for a couple of years. Or in some cases, if the female is really quite young, maybe she's never been with a male sexually. So it's quite a mystery, but there she is pregnant. And then suddenly, after 2.5 or maybe 3 months, she'll wake up one day and she realizes, that's weird. I don't feel pregnant anymore. And she'll go to the doctor, and sure enough, she's not pregnant. Now, the doctors very often will say, well, when did you get your abortion? And she'll say, I didn't get an abortion. And he'll say, when did you get your miscarriage? And she'll say, I didn't have a miscarriage. I would have noticed that. There would have been pain and cramping, and I haven't experienced that. So it's really a mystery. That fetus, or rather embryo at that stage, is simply gone.
Incredible.
And nobody really knows why. But in the meantime, that embryo that's been removed from the woman is being gestated very successfully on board the UFO that the woman had been taken to. And there are tanks, they look like glass tanks full of a special kind of fluid, like the amniotic fluid. And so this little embryo grows and develops into a hybrid baby inside the tank. And then at a certain time, usually about 9 months or so, that little fetus will be taken from the tank and raised in the way that babies are raised on board the craft. And that many of these women, as I mentioned before, are in subsequent encounters, they're taken on board and introduced to and urged to hold and nurture these babies, which are
Right.
theirs.
Right.
So women have different reactions to that.
Yep.
Some of them are sort of horrified because this baby doesn't really look right from our point of view, doesn't really look fully human. And so they have sort of an aversive reaction to that, or maybe they get used to it on subsequent visits. But some human women find that they have that capacity to love that unusual looking baby and really give true nurturing. They've been told, these women, that they need to nurture these babies because since the babies are half human, they must have this human mother nurturing,
Right.
or they
Right.
simply will not survive.
How many races would you say are involved in this hybridization program?
Well, I don't think we have an exact number, but I would guess, just from the work that I've done, that there would be 15 to 20 different species that are doing the hybridization. And perhaps they're all doing the hybridization for different reasons. There also are generations of the hybrids that we know about. In other words, it started quite a while back, and the first hybrids, as far as we know, were 50% extraterrestrial and 50% human. And those little babies did not fare very, very well. A
Dating
lot
back
of them
to
apparently died.
dating back to the 50s or the 40s?
Well, yes, it probably does. I would rather say maybe the 1960s, but it's just unknown. There's nobody who's actually told us when they started this program, but it definitely has been several decades.
Right.
And then some of those babies, the hybrids on board the ships, did survive and grew up to be old enough to be sexually mature, and then they combined with other humans. So the offspring of that combination would be 2/3 hybrid and 1/3, I mean, 2/3, hybrid and 1/3 human. And then when those offspring grew old enough, maybe 12 or 13 years or whatever, sexually mature, then they would combine with still another human. And so you see, you get more and more a portion of human in
Right.
those subsequent generations.
Yes.
So
So
that they were finding, and I think, as far as I can tell, all of this has been quite experimental. In other words, I don't think it's been going on for hundreds of years.
No. So there's many
Yeah.
ways here. There's many ways here that these are they're created in a sense. It's not
Yes,
just one
and then
particular
there's
set way.
another way too that's very important, that human men, they have sperm taken from them in a variety of ways, sometimes by the other beings, sometimes by a mechanical means, which they do not enjoy, as you can imagine. And then that sperm is combined with extraterrestrial female material to create the hybrid.
Okay.
And still another way, if you can take even a little bit more here, is that sometimes a human male or a human female will be taken and actually made to have intercourse with an extraterrestrial, the kind of extraterrestrial that has the biological apparatus to do that. And sometimes those hybrids seem to be born from those extraterrestrial females on board the ship.
Amazing, amazing.
So
Oh,
so it happens in different ways.
yeah.
But these hybrids in our book, Meet the Hybrids, they did not have it happen in that way. I
Oh,
mentioned, the injections going into the fetus in the mother's womb during the pregnancy, but there are other ways too. One of them, for instance, one of our hybrids feels that at age 6 that she was injected or implanted in some way with the extraterrestrial genetics, which then made her a hybrid. And another one of our hybrids felt that the mother of that hybrid had been taken on board and an implant or an embryo had been implanted in her. And the embryo already had that mixture of human genetics and extraterrestrial genetics, and that embryo was born and is one of our adult hybrids now. So you see, it happens in
yeah.
various ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah. There's no set. This is yeah. Okay, so it's not exactly. It's a bit foggy, isn't it? Sometimes our understanding of it is at the bottom of the pile here, isn't it? We really, even after all the work you've done, we really don't understand too much about it, do we, just yet? But we're starting to dig in, just as you said, Miguel, at the beginning of this interview. There's many more books to do on this, and it's such an important topic, I think, as well. And just going back, I don't know who would like to answer this question, but also in the sense of okay, so you said there, Barbara, that at the beginning of all of this, you said that there may be a past life connection with the entities that are abducting them.
Oh, yes. And of course, this has been of great fascination to me because
So it's not
I
done from a
have
cruel.
done
It's not done from a
years of
cruel.
past life regression therapy.
Yeah, yeah. So Barbara, so it's not done from a cruel perspective. That's what I was. Yeah, in a sense.
Yeah, so some of our hybrids feel that they have been a member of the extraterrestrial race, that they have a lot of in them now, that they were a member of that race in a previous lifetime. Some of them feel that if they have a mixture of extraterrestrial races in them now, that they were or may have had lifetimes as each one of those different races as well. So they had been extraterrestrials in past lives. And some of our hybrids, I think, don't really know that one way or the other. One of our hybrids, Jacqueline Smith, has this wonderful ability. I admire it so much, of doing what she calls star origin readings. And in a star origin reading, she is able to psychically see the whole range of incarnations that any one of us have had. So she did a star origin reading for me. I believe she did one for Miguel as well on a separate occasion. And she could see how I had first incarnated as a soul way, way back. I don't know how many thousands or millions of years ago that might have been. But she could see the very first coming into any kind of lifetime from that sort of nebulous but conscious state of being a soul. And then she could see a whole, like a lineage or a succession of lifetimes, and pointed out some of the main features of that lifetime, those lifetimes that I had had. And I know from all of my past life therapy work and many regressions I've had done on me, I know about quite a number, probably 40 or so, of my previous lifetimes. I had already done that before meeting Jacqueline, and she helped to really expand my awareness of all that by pointing out certain lifetimes I had had as an extraterrestrial being of
Right.
different species according
That's
to
interesting.
the lifetime.
Yeah.
And interestingly enough, the ones that she said that I have had the most lifetimes as the extraterrestrial species, that is, that's the species that in this lifetime I've had the most loving, wonderful, open feeling toward. That group happens to be the mantis beings. And
Very
so
interesting.
it helps me to sort of
Yeah.
understand why, of all the species of extraterrestrial beings that I have known about, especially
Right.
through my clients, that the mantis beings have always been my favorites.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
absolutely. And we're going to get back to Miguel in just a second as well here. And just to finish this off, because this is really important, this is, you're laying a lot of foundation work here as well for people. Now there obviously there's a difference between the hybrids, the soul starseeds, the indigos, and the crystal children. Or is there? Is there a major difference between those, or are we talking about the same thing?
Well, I'm not entirely clear. Maybe Miguel is. I think there's a tremendous similarity, but I think the hybrids may be a bit different in that they actually have the extraterrestrial genetics in them. Now, I'm comparing this to the star seed adults and the
Yeah.
star children, crystal children, indigo children, and so forth, who I think are here, that they had been those kinds of beings in previous lifetimes.
Right.
That's my
Right.
speculation. I
Right.
can't prove that.
Oh. Oh.
But
Okay.
but they may not be hybrid in this lifetime in the sense of having extraterrestrial genetics in them.
Yes.
But in a sense, they are from them, if that makes sense. That in this incarnation, they may be fully human, but they have been those other races, and they brought with them many of those remarkable abilities.
Yes.
The
Yes.
psychic abilities, the spiritual
Yep.
consciousness, the ability to heal, to communicate telepathically, and so forth. Um,
Well,
but
this is
I think, Miguel, do you have any different take on that?
Well, we did put together a glossary for the book, and we were endeavoring to try to understand this for ourselves and make it understandable for people, particularly those new to the subject who may simply be
yes.
interested in spiritual matters, if you
Yes.
like, and be interested in the spiritual aspects of this subject. Um, so the definition we ended up with for starseed is a soul originating from outside Earth, which has incarnated into a form for a specific mission on Earth. This form can be human, animal, or other being. So that definition came from the hybrids themselves, and we talked about indigos a little bit, but I'm not sure myself if indigos are star seeds, but I myself, I guess, tick a lot of boxes for indigos, and
Yeah.
various
Yeah.
people involved in this project had said
Well.
you're
Well. This.
clearly an indigo. And in the conversations that I had with a number of them, I did a star origin reading with Jacqueline too. and we went back to kind of my original incarnation, and it was more an angelic celestial type of group consciousness. And I'd had particular angelic experiences in this life, and so there was some resonance with that. But it's still, am I a starseed? Did I incarnate from elsewhere?
Exactly.
Unknown,
exactly.
Unknown.
This is where
it's one of those subjects that I'm sure there's a tremendous amount written on the subject out there.
Miguel,
that we particularly focused on.
Miguel, can you hear me? Miguel, can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Sorry, yeah. This is where it's going to get interesting now, because now we're gonna turn this on its head in a sense. And why are they here? Why are they being placed here? What is their greater purpose for mankind to be placed here? Can you see if you can answer some of those questions? What you've learnt on this experience? Why are they here?
Well, in a word, if it had to be down to one word, it would be ascension. That came up over and over again at the beginning of this process, and it took some time to begin to, for myself, who had not examined that particular subject hitherto, it took me some time to begin to try to piece it together, because they all have a different view. So what we've done for ourselves and for others in order to try to help to understand these things is the core of the book are the interviews. So you have 8 hybrids being interviewed. You have the transcripts of those interviews, answering a standard set of questions, but they would go into things that were particularly relevant to them in their experience, just in terms of their inclinations, their abilities, their missions. So that's the core of the book. Then in the latter part of the book, part 3, basically we have a kind of thematic summary section where we pull together all of the information, all of the statements on particular topics. And of course, we've done one on ascension. By the end of it, funnily enough, it was one of the people who has spent the least amount of time understanding that they're a hybrid, one of the people who's newest to this. Some people in this, we have ages ranging from sort of mid-20s to mid-60s. This particular guy is English, Matt Thomas, and he had a really simple and elegant description of it. In his view, ascension is a process of evolution, effectively. And that process can be spiritual, material, and for some people, ascension is a physical thing that is happening here, and the earth is not going to change. We're not going to change. Robert Fullington described it as, trying to think of his precise words, but a new expression of life on this planet. So for him, it's simple. Okay, yes, he has, and you'll read it, this whole complex kind of physical explanation of how that thing might be triggered, what it is that may be incoming physically that will trigger this kind of consciousness shift. Then for other people, it's the earth itself is going to become less physical. It's basically going to go from the 3rd to the 5th dimension, from the physical to the metaphysical. Then you get all kinds of complex ideas around that of what happens to the people who don't ascend. Where do they go? Somebody said they end up on another 3D world somewhere to continue. And some people say, well, you're going to kind of go round and round. Some people aren't ready to ascend because they want to learn more. They're not ready to evolve. They want to go deeper. Then one person in particular said it's about existing in a state of bliss. So that's just even trying to keep it that concise. You can see how many different directions you can go off in unpacking that.
But Miguel, I think it's worth adding that basically all of our hybrids see ascension as a great improvement over the existing human conditions. Definitely an increase or an upgrade, shall we say, of consciousness and spiritual appreciation. Wouldn't you say that's common to all of them?
Absolutely, yeah. I think everybody sees a kind of enlightenment, if you like, as being part of this, because effectively you can't evolve in any respect at any great speed unless you do it spiritually, because that is really where the action is. I think the whole point, I guess one of the key things that I've really learned in this whole process is that, which, is a conclusion I'd reached in previous research on consciousness, that the game here is not material. People get stuck on the material. For whatever reason, particularly in Western culture, we've got this kind of, I don't know, it's where we've kind of got stuck, and it may be because people want some explanation for things in their lives. And a lot of people, I guess culturally, perhaps they feel that religion just didn't do it. We're just not seeing that in the world. The kind of experience we're all having of religion in the world at this point, particularly here in Europe, is not a good one. It's not a good one. I think somehow people have become particularly focused on scientific explanations. But I guess we have had miracles there. Maybe religiously you'd say, where are the miracles? It's all faith and no miracle. But with science, it's the opposite. It's constant miracles with no faith. There it is. But I think culturally, what sort of seeps in is that science has the answers. So if science says that there's no reality to this, then I guess people are happy with that. They're comfortable with it, because when you go down this road, you will continually come to places that challenge you, that make you feel uncomfortable. I've had it continually in the unfolding of my understanding of the whole ufology subject, and in particular the hybrid phenomenon. There are so many points in this at which you can feel challenged, uncomfortable, out of your depth. So I have enormous sympathy for any people reading this book that struggle to, because they may read a chapter, think, oh my God, that is just incredible. They close the book. I think, I've got to get out. I've got to get to the shops. They're walking around Sainsbury's and they're thinking, well, where is the evidence of this reality?
That's true.
There's a real tension that exists, I think. I mean, in the process of working on this, my God, 6 months, all these interviews that Barbara and I did, they were all, for some people, you might call them religious experiences. They're so moving. They are so expanding. They are so generous, and they are so loving, because what all of this tells us is that we are all one, that all things are connected. We'd spoken Kevin, yesterday about whether there may be any connection between this subject and the events in Paris in the last week.
Yes.
And the thing that came to my mind in particular was something that Jacqueline Smith has underlined over and over and over again in her chapter. You'll read it. It's a beautiful experience to spend time speaking with her, to read her understanding of the nature of things. As far as she is concerned, she has taught this for decades in her workshops, etc.
Yes.
The most important thing anybody can understand is that we are all one. We are all connected. And I think the fact that humanity does not collectively understand that, I feel, has enormous explanatory power. If you look at something like Paris, what occurred, if you look at almost any facet of human difficulty, I think it all arises out of the fact that we don't understand the fundamental nature of reality, which is that all things are connected. All of us, our consciousness, our physicality coming together here. If you understand that we're all one, we're effectively all the same being with the same consciousness, we're simply different manifestations of a single unified consciousness. If everybody understands that, how do you create conflict and difficulty when you understand that you're all one? How do you take more than you need? You're only taking it from yourself.
It's a very complicated subject, isn't it? Because, well, we make it complicated, shall I say. But, do we potentially, as a soul, choose to have experiences? So therefore, we may choose to have an experience of life where we don't need to remember that we are one, and that we're here to live a selfish life, in a sense, a life that's not, there to serve others or to help others. It's more about getting out an experience that we need. So we incarnate into families where we have restrictions, like coming into a religious family, restrictions on what we're able to think outside the box, think for ourselves, or we have incarnated into a family where we never look at these subjects, and we go through life, not living as fulfilled or as happy as we could do if we just looked outside the box a bit. Is our soul blocking us, in a sense, or maybe we have the free will in any life to, at any point, to get to that point. Maybe I don't. Do you see what I mean? It's such a complicated subject.
Several times the hybrid said that we are here for the experience, that this 3D world here, and Barbara reminded me of this on a couple of occasions, that they say Earth is a place of polarities, that here is where you are going to find these polarities. When you're incarnated into a body which needs constant maintenance, and you have all these powerful emotions washing around in you, and you have a fundamental ignorance of, if you like, your nature and the nature of other people, because we have very kind of underdeveloped psychic capacity in general, we don't really understand one another very well. All of the conditions here are absolutely ripe for conflict.
Yes.
One would say. And I feel like this is one of the things I want to dig into in a second book is how all of this sits together with soul agreements, with evolution. What are the mechanics of this whole thing? How is it all organized? Because for myself, I sort of want to be able to take the back off this whole thing and look at the mechanism, see how it works.
Well, Barbara, I'm going to let you in. Don't worry. Yeah, and thank you for that, Miguel. That's so true. And let me just say this as well. That then that's very interesting what you're saying there, because then why would these benevolent beings who seem to only love us to produce these hybrids want to help to alter us, in a sense? Did something go wrong, or are they just doing what they think is the right thing to do, which is to help us remember in any way they can do? Barbara, to you.
Yes, well, I think that they see, oh my goodness, they see the problems on Earth, they see the foibles, they see um, people within humanity killing one another, being against one each other, warring against each other, being pugnacious, being greedy, and some wonderful individuals among us as well, thank goodness. But they really seem to see that humanity needs upgrading. For one thing, if we do not advance in consciousness and spirituality, in accepting each other as one, as they understand it, they see that we're going to ruin life on Earth. I mean, we could do it any moment, and we all know that with our nuclear capability. A lot of these species I have been finding over the years are extremely concerned about planet Earth, not because of what the Earth is like itself, but because of humanity and what we're doing to ruin it and to ruin each other. And so they understand that this is a planet of polarity, as Miguel said, and this is a place where people can actually come into the three-dimensional world and experience. And the soul learns by experience. That's been known for ages, actually, by some people anyway, that we are ongoing, continuing souls. That's what we primarily are. And we come into different incarnations, and particularly when we come into incarnation on Earth, we come in for experience, positive and negative. And we learn, the soul learns and develops over time, over many, many lifetimes, from experience. So some of these people now who are doing the atrocities and the bombings and the killings and the warrings and so forth, they're having that kind of experience, which presumably their souls will learn from. And hopefully in future incarnations, they will take a different side of it. Maybe they'll be trying to help with other people creating atrocities like this. But I think that the extraterrestrials, they see this about humanity. They see this about planet Earth, and they're very concerned. They want to help us. They want to upgrade us. And what better way to do it, they think, than to have their own people, in other words, hybrids, who are accepted here as human beings, that they come and live with us and bring these insights, bring these abilities, bring this perspective, bring the upgrading of humanity to us by appearing to be fully one of us.
Right.
I mean, I think it's really a brilliant idea when you really think about it.
Yeah.
If there are these other consciousnesses, these other beings more advanced, not only technologically, but spiritually advanced, they want to help us. So I think it's a brilliant way that they would, one way or the other, create people who are partly them and their perspective and their abilities to live here right with us,
Right.
and to help us.
Right.
So all of these hybrids are here giving service. They're all in one way or the other, in person or online or some way. They are teaching classes. They're inspiring people. They're giving healing, physical healing, and they are in various ways, every one of them, really doing their part to upgrade consciousness of humans,
Right.
and each one is doing it in their own area. Some are more public, giving the opportunities to speak publicly than others.
Right.
A couple of them have written books, and this helps to share the information. But they're definitely all here for very, very benevolent purposes, totally supported by the extraterrestrial races that
right. And
they are composed of.
absolutely. And these are all just opinions, really, aren't they? What I'm saying here, in a sense, how do I know? But it would then seem from me then that maybe these races that have spawned these hybrids, perhaps their connection back to source, they remember their soul more than we do. They have a true remembrance of where they came from and where they're going to. Their veil is less than ours. It would seem then.
Yes, and I think that so many people in the world, humans, don't really have too much of a concept of ongoing life of the soul, and that this is just one chapter among many. And I think many humans, millions of them, try to be close to the source through religions. And depending on the religion, they may be more successful or not in really having a sense of connection with source. But these other extraterrestrial groups don't seem to have religion, but they are very aware of source. One of the questions that we asked each of our hybrids was, what is their understanding of God? And they all came up with not a religious or earth religion point of view of God, but with a sense that God is the creative source of all. And in a sense, it is all. It is everything.
Right.
A lot of these extraterrestrial beings, and I had learned this too from many of my experiencer clients, they they don't have institutions to worship or to learn about God, but they have this innate sense and appreciation for the creative source of all, and that goes along so very nicely with
Right.
the feeling that we are all one. We are
Yes.
all part of this creative
And
source.
then they're not just going to show up, are they? That's not in there. I mean, I know it's a bit of a silly question in one sense, but they have in there has been crashes apparently. There has been downed craft, but they're not just going to show up and say, "Hey, we're here. We're spiritually aware. We don't have religion. Here's a much better way that you guys could actually, get on in your planet. There's enough for everyone. Love is the only answer. How much did you love today? If you embrace this, look how.
Yeah.
But they're not doing that. They're not going to come in and just tell their truth, are they? Are they that evolved that they want us to reach our own truth?
Oh, yes, thank you so much for bringing that up. Yes, they know that we have to do this. I mean, they could swoop in and, do tremendous things here to solve our problems, but this is our planet, and they respect that, and they know that we are the ones who have to get it together and clear up our own problems. So they do inspire a lot of people. I think many people are getting downloads from certain extraterrestrial groups without having to experience abduction encounters. But many people in their sleep and in their meditations, or even just as they go about their lives, are getting inspiration from these other beings. about how to help here in humanity. And then, of course, the hybrids, having the hybrids come here and live right with us as one of us, that is a very wonderful way to help to bring about betterment here. But they are aware that humanity is so emotional and so reactive and so fearful that if a craft would land on the White House lawn, as is often said here in the U.S., that, our armaments would rush in and tanks would be pointed at them and missiles and goodness knows what.
They're already here, though,
you
aren't
know,
they? That's the that's the thing. They are already here, and I love that. I'm sorry to have to sort of chip in here because Miguel, I'm going to get back to you with a few questions I've got. That Barbara, that was wonderful. Thank you for just sharing that there. Oh, I've just forgotten my question. But in a sense, what I wanted to just say on that, Barbara, is that. Well, this just goes so much deeper, doesn't it, than just UFO abductions and
yes.
and craft spotted over military bases and just the normal. I mean, some people in the UFO field do not want to go down this rabbit hole because they come. I think they come. I think they're not ready for it.
Yeah.
But what you guys have done here is just a tremendous work to the overall UFO understanding. It's really amazing.
Oh,
Well, I
thank
would
you.
say that the contribution. I mean, we just happen to be, the right people in the right place at the right time.
Well, it's
but really, we're just
amazing.
trying to facilitate
Yeah.
the sharing of information that Barbara and I, as individuals and as, if you like, professionals, value extremely highly.
I will say with both of you, you both come across very, very grounded. So that's that's important for this work as well. Yeah.
It is.
And I think just going back to yourself, Barbara, and I'll come back to you, Miguel. Grounded in the sense that, as you've said before in this interview, this is not the only part of your practice. You keep yourself grounded by people coming to you for all sorts of different things. Using regression, maybe quit smoking or whatever it may be. Childhood
marriage
traumas,
counseling, family problems, depressions,
yeah.
anxieties.
Exactly.
Yes, and I think that's very, very good. I appreciate that. That's part of my work too, because that keeps me very involved in humanity and human situations, human problems.
Yes,
that's a good balance. I appreciate that.
Absolutely, and the same with Miguel's background as well. It's kept him very balanced, and he, even though I know this process for you has been incredible in a sense, and it's really pushed you into thinking very well. You're not the same person. I know you're not, Miguel, but you as we had a conversation off air today, you're still keeping yourself grounded even when you go for a walk. Just to have the break from this.
Well,
yes.
I guess I do my best, and part of it is that I do come from a very grounded place in my background, to say the least, and I suppose that I always keep in mind my parents when writing anything, I guess, but particularly this book. I just think, how do you have a conversation like this with, my father started all of this. He got me that book on UFOs that kicked all this off. He took me to see Star Wars when it was first on the cinema.
Yes.
I mean, just that opening line a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, but it seemed to be and then you see all this stuff that seems to be the far future, and that completely blew my mind as what was I? I was only 5 or 6 years old, I think, when I first saw it.
Yeah.
And and so straight away from that young age, I had that perspective, like that felt real. When you're that young and you see a movie like that is that fully fleshed out and realized in its story world, you buy it. I mean, you absolutely buy it. And all of my friends, I was thinking about this just a couple of days ago. It was just the biggest thing for us as kids. Okay, yeah, there was a few other things, the Dukes of Hazzard and chips and these other things, but there were a fraction of 1%. Star Wars was probably about 60% of our energy. Panini football stickers were about 30%. That and football,
And it's
everything
all coming
else.
back as well. The new Star Wars movie this year. It's all coming back in Christmas, and it'll be a
Well,
whole new generation of people it'll inspire into science fiction.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting timing. Because of that, I do think that there is going to be an eruption of interest in science fiction.
Of course.
Everybody is going to be making sci-fi for the next few
Yeah.
years. Oh my goodness.
And you never know what bigger pictures are being played out as to why these things are happening in the background.
Absolutely. I mean, I made a prediction to somebody. I said, look, if we get this book into the right hands, I make a prediction that within 5 years there is going to be a TV show on whatever channel, whatever network, called Hybrids. When TV producers and writers get hold of
The right people,
the raw material in this book and understand something of the gravity of this thing, but
actually that's a good point. Let's just move into the gravity of it. Let's just look at some of what are their powers that they have that are here to heal us. So what are some of these common things between them? So we talked about the psychic. I'm guessing telepathy. So if you just what did you discover on your journey when interviewing these 8 people?
Well, healing is a big part of it. Physical healing. Several of them are trained Reiki healers, and others do other kind of healing. And I think every one of them is involved in helping to heal other human beings and healing animals as well. Robert Fullington has a whole protocol which he is, I hope, going to be putting on his website about how people can heal themselves. And I think all of these people are really quite brilliant in their own way. I'm sure if we could measure their IQs, they would be right up there. But they do have this sense, all of them, of serving others and helping. And one of the ways that they do that is in this physical healing work. Some of them do the healing work remotely. And I experienced some of this myself because after a couple of months of working on this book, unfortunately, I had a drastic health situation. I had 2 strokes.
Oh gosh.
And I was just really totally flat out in the hospital for several days, and then took me a good month to really kind of get back to any normality. But during that month after the hospital, each time we had an interview with any of the hybrids, they were aware that I'd had this catastrophe, and they sent healing energies, healing wishes to me. And I could really feel that. I really don't think I was just imagining it, but I could really feel it. I could feel it up in my head where the strokes had happened, and I could feel this tremendous feeling of tingling and energy running through that part of my head. And I'm so grateful, made a remarkable,
Congratulations.
wonderful
Good
recovery.
On you. Yeah.
And I'm back fully doing everything in my life now. And I think that those healing wishes, healing energies, actually were able to remotely come to me.
Yes.
So that was nice. And some of them recognized too on the Skype interviews that there would be some of their kind of extraterrestrial beings behind me here in my home
Wow.
in California. And I could not see them, but I could feel their presence and feel their energy. And it was
Interdimensional.
so nice to get their corroboration.
Would that be
that
interdimensional? But would that be interdimensional, Barbara? We're talking here.
Yes, it must be. A lot of these beings do seem to be interdimensional. So I did not physically see them, and they were behind me here, but I could feel a warmth, a different sort of a soft, tingly energy. And I was even feeling it before one of them mentioned that she could see 3 beings behind me. And I said, oh, well, I've just been feeling that already, but I didn't know what it was. It was nice to get that confirmation.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm so glad that you're feeling a lot, back to your normal self now. But isn't it amazing, the interdimensional aspect of it? When you look at, we don't see these ships in the sky. If I look up at the sky now, I'm not probably going to see anything with my eyes. Yet I get a camera recorder out, take a snap picture, and there's a chance that it's not there with my naked eyes, but on the picture it is, or with a particular type of night camera, night goggles, night vision.
Oh yes.
So in the same space that we sit now, interdimensionally, I wonder what else there might be, and it opens up the whole thing of well, maybe
we may be surrounded by other dimensional beings, and we don't even know it.
Yes.
So we could call these interdimensional beings, we could call them spirit beings, people who have lived on Earth, for instance, and died and gone into the spirit realm, or they could be extraterrestrial interdimensional beings. Oh, and this reminds me to say that about our hybrids, very importantly, they all seem to have guidance, higher guidance from the beings that they are partly composed of. And they get messages from their guides. They hear messages telepathically when they're awake and sometimes when they're asleep. Sometimes they get more substantial downloads of information from their extraterrestrial guides, and they feel that that's very, very much part of their life. And sometimes they actually get visited and have the opportunity of seeing those very same extraterrestrial guides. I think that's quite common.
Wow.
With all of them. And so we may also, Kevin, have guidance too. Well, I'm sure we do.
Sure.
But I think for most of us, at least for myself, I can say, I'm usually not aware of that. But there have been special moments when some of my guidance has just beamed through to me with a loud voice in my head.
Yeah.
Woo, and I have to pay attention. But I think these hybrids are much more in touch with that guidance and with those beings.
Can I ask them, Miguel, how would you know if you was a hybrid or not, or if you're dating a hybrid in a sense, or there's someone around you that may not be, who you think they may not even know who they are?
Well, we did begin to put together a questionnaire we were going to have in the book, which was intended to help people to look at some different aspects of their life that might give them a clue as to whether or not they might be a hybrid. And then thereafter, they could be referred to Cynthia Crawford, who that is one of the things that she does. That is part of her mission. As I say, all of the hybrids come in with a sense of mission in this life. And that is one of the things that she particularly does, that she's not necessarily here for humans, but for the starseeds and hybrids to help them to understand who they are. The problem with the questionnaire is that as we referred it to some of the hybrids to say, well, does, like Barbara drafted 30 questions or something, and then one of the hybrids in particular sent back another 10 or something like that added on, and then emailed back with another 15 or 20. And in the end, we just thought this is just going to be a mess. But I think by the time people get to the end of certainly part 2 of the book, the hybrid interviews, I think that they will be aware of how much resonance this has with them. What's interesting for me is that I've tried all the way through this process to really keep my mouth shut, but when talking to the hybrids about what others may have shared.
Right.
So I want all of that to be a surprise for them, if you like.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them are friends. They live in the same country. They know one another. But for some of them, I really think there's going to be lots of places where they're really going to be quite surprised at the amount of agreement between their childhoods, their pasts. And I think for anybody reading the book, they will know because that's one of the first things that we asked. How did you come to the understanding that you're a hybrid?
That's right.
And most of them say it unfolded over the course of my life, and it continues to unfold now. A lot of them say around the age of 6, the first thing may have happened around 5, 6, 7, something like that. And then a lot of them say, that happened, then some memories came back in my teens, some in my 20s, some in my 30s. And one guy, Robert Fullington, said that, he had all of this stuff going on in his life, which you'll read about. But what really kicked it off, and this is one of those fascinating $1 million questions that came up in this book. A guy, I think he was working at Home Depot at one particular point, and a guy came in, just walked up to Robert off the street and handed him a piece of paper and said, "You might be interested in looking into this," and left. And on that piece of paper, there were things about UFOs and conspiracy theories and whatnot. And Robert started to look, and he saw one video, which he showed me last week, and that was it. He had the same experience I did. He just couldn't let it go. He just was researching this thing round the clock. And I think, everybody has their own version of that, their own version of what was the thing that made the penny drop. At what point did they think, oh my God, there really has got to be something to this? I mean, one of them, this extraordinary young woman in the southeast of England, Charmaine, she had begun to suspect that she may be a reptilian hybrid. Various things had kind of stirred this possibility for her. And then she said, I'd like confirmation if this is true. She was speaking to the beings without seeing them, as I understand it. And then, and this came in, she came to understand this through a regression. She found herself becoming conscious in a kind of what she understood to be an underwater cave. Presumably the cave was not full of water, but she understood that the cave itself was underwater somewhere. And there were 3 reptilian beings in the room with her. And they placed their hands on different parts of her body and shifted her into her reptilian form. And she said that it was painless, it was voluntary, and she said it was the most amazing feeling of completeness. And that was echoed in almost every interview we had, in almost everybody's experience. When they came to understand that they're a hybrid, they didn't have what a normal human response might be, which is shock and horror, freaking out, and possibly going to pieces. What they felt was a sense of relief, a sense of, well, yeah, I kind of knew that. They felt a sense of integration, kind of reconciliation between these different aspects of themselves. A lot of them said that they had, some in particular said that they had a sense of an internal conflict, an internal struggle, that there were these very different parts of themselves that were in some kind of conflict. And when they came to learn what they truly are, they found peace.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely, and that, there's so many strands to this work, and it's really well put together as well, and with the different chapters. I wonder what the next evolution of this is going to be. Are we? Well, I wonder what the population is as well of hybrids that make up the world, in the sense, in all the different cultures.
I wish we knew that. I don't think we really have any indication. There have been polls, like Roper polls, for instance, about how many people experience extraterrestrial contact. And we do have some figures on that. Back in 1991, a Roper poll, which is one of the main polling groups in the United States, came up with the figure of 5 million Americans, knowing that there are people experiencing extraterrestrial contact all over the world. Then there was a later poll, I believe it was at the end of the 1990s, and the figure estimated for people experiencing extraterrestrial contact was 8 million, but that's just in United States. And so we could extrapolate some much, much larger figures if we look at it in a worldwide situation. But I don't think there's been any correlation that I know of anyway about the hybrids, because this whole subject of the hybrids is fairly newly coming onto the scene, the public scene.
But it's obviously very, very important for this program to be taking place. It's obviously of great importance to so many different races out there. Obviously, I wonder what involvement the governments of the world have, or if they have any, just to know between them that the information is shared, that this is a possibility, that this could be happening.
Well, I do hear from some of my clients that there are secret programs going on from some portion of United States government where there are underground facilities and humans appearing like military people. I don't know if they're really military or not, but they're described that way. Anyway, humans working along with certain extraterrestrial beings in these underground facilities, and they do take some of the extraterrestrial experiencers occasionally to these underground bases for various purposes. One of them is to study these people and to understand or try to learn what they have experienced with extraterrestrial beings in their abductions, and what kind of skills have they learned from the extraterrestrials. And one of our hybrids, one of our women, was Charmaine, was taken to an underground facility. So this must have been in United Kingdom, and because she lives there, and she was made in a way to morph, to change into her reptilian self. And then, which she had done anyway on occasion spontaneously before that experience. But in the experience with the military in the underground facility, she was made to change into her reptilian shape. And then they were busy studying the reptilian being. One of the interesting things in that regression was really quite fascinating and delightful to me, is that the reptilian being was much more talented and much more intelligent than the humans who were studying this reptilian, and could kind of outsmart the humans.
Yeah.
So that was really a very interesting thing. And then she, our hybrid woman, eventually during that regression morphed back into her regular human hybrid self and went on with her life.
As we approach the end here now, almost at the end of this interview, which we're getting into 2 hours right now, and I really appreciate both your time for this. You have no idea. Let me start with you then, Barbara. What would you say is the most important message of this book?
That these beings exist, that extraterrestrials exist. I mean, that's sort of the baseline. And then from there, very importantly, that these beings, these hybrid beings, and the extraterrestrials they are coming from, are here with very positive intent. They are here to help us and to upgrade humanity, to increase our spiritual understanding of things, and that wonderful oneness in creation that we all are. As far as I can see, it is totally, sincerely benevolent that they are here.
And for yourself, Miguel, what would you say is your sort of, if you could sum up a message?
Well, I feel like one of the most important realizations that I had through this process was that eventually I realized that going through this whole process was part of my own ascension. It was part of my own evolution. I mean, you've no idea how many things changed for me in the course of the last 6 months, in my understanding, in my relationships to everything philosophically. It's been an absolutely extraordinary process, and realizing that it's not that the hybrids are the only people that are involved in ascension. Absolutely everybody is, and it's available. Juju, or Jojali, one of the women involved in this process, had said that over and over again, that she was talking about the light and said it simply offers what it is. And that's how it is. This whole process is so much of the light, and it simply offers what it is, and anybody can participate. It's like anybody can pursue enlightenment. You can pursue that in any number of ways in your life, but if you wish to pursue it, you can pursue it. That's something that you can be involved in.
Yeah.
And this whole thing is not only about people who get abducted by UFOs that are going to have a transformational experience, that are going to personally expand. One of the things that I was keen to do in the book was to draw together particular practices that the hybrids have, that they share with us, and I put those into box texts. And in the chapter on ascension, we've got more material in there which people can draw upon in their own process. So this is something that is available to everybody. That's the amazing thing about it. It isn't just happening on spaceships or in underground bases. You can, when you read this book, I think there's a lot of things that a lot of people will relate to. They will get it. Yeah. It may take them, I think every time you read the book, you're going to find new things, because, I was, doing so much work on the production side of it, on the transcription, the editing, etc. I've gone through the book at least 20 times, and every time I read something that it's like I've read it for the first time, and suddenly I get it.
Powerful, isn't it?
So I feel like it's a process. Every time you read the book, I think you're going to get something new out of it. You're going to understand it better. And I think, like, if you interview Barbara and I in a year today, we will have continued to learn and grow through this process.
Absolutely, and that's what it's all about, isn't it? Yeah. And Barbara, thank you for that, Miguel. Thank you so very much. And Barbara, if people want to get a regression with yourself, that this can all be done over Skype as well, can't it? So
it can. Yes, I've been recently doing it that way. I used to always insist on doing regressions in person, but if I get to know the person a little bit first by telephone or Skype, then I feel it's okay to do the regression.
Perfect. Well, we've been putting your website up there, and the book and other links as well. There was a link that I found in the book to do with a community-based project where the hybrids had come together, a hybrid community online had come together, and there were pictures on this website of their painted pictures of hybrid children that these people had potentially met up with.
Right. That's the hybrid children community.
That's the one. Sorry. Yes.
Yes. Those people have all done regressions with me.
Yeah.
They're very fine people. There's also the IHCI group that I am part of, and some of these hybrids are part of that group. That's the Institute for Cosmic Human Interaction. And we are a fairly new group as of about a year ago, and we're trying to find ways that we can help to educate more people about these realities.
Absolutely.
About the extraterrestrials, the human cooperation, and hybrids.
Okay. Well, wow. I just want to say, Barbara and Miguel, thank you so much for taking the time to join me today. It's been quite interesting.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
You're very welcome.
Well, we've come to an end on tonight's show. Don't forget that you can listen and watch all our past interviews on The More Show's official YouTube channel. Remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel for new daily shows. You may also find out more on all past and upcoming guests on the show via themoreshow.co.uk, and do like us on Facebook and Twitter for the latest updates. So until next time, be safe.